Welcome to another exciting episode of the Spirit Log. Yay! I had an interesting conversation yesterday that really made me think about something that I would now like to share with you. And that is change and life changes and how challenging they are, and just some perspective on how I have so far coped with some of my larger changes in my life. And to begin, I think I'll start by explaining that I used to be a reference librarian. I also did a whole lot of life coaching on the side. I have a bit of a connection with the energy of the world and have been able to pull in a lot of pretty amazing wisdom that I don't necessarily have in my own life, but that comes through for the people that I speak with and listen to as a life coach or a healer. My friend says I should call myself a curandera, but I don't have the cultural background to feel like I can do that with respect and integrity for the people who truly practice that, which basically means healer or witch or herbalist or life coach. It's that stuff. It's the life, the way that living and dying works in the world. And there's just a lot of change I've learned in just about every life. So anyway, one of the things that has happened with my illness and my chronic health challenges is that I have a lot of brain fog. I have a lot of toxins that are just stuck in my brain, interfering with my memory and some of my functions. And so there are things that I still do fairly well. I'm still really good at telling other people what to do. I still connect in with my intuition fairly well, which is great because that means that I can just kind of check in with myself about things, and unless I'm having an anxiety attack, and then nothing goes well until I've calmed down again and recentered and sort of renourished the parts of me that get shut off when I'm this tight about my anxiety and what's going to happen and I don't know. And so with all of that, the toxins that exist day to day in a library setting make me very ill within a few minutes of going into a library. So I'm not really expecting that even if my health improves at some point, I'm not going to have that career again. It's just not an option for me anymore. But beyond that, I've come to realize I don't do research the way I used to do research. I don't remember details the way I used to remember details. I used to keep a calendar, like a daily calendar, because it was fun. I like being organized like that. And now I keep it because I need to check it several times a day to make sure that I haven't forgotten that I'm supposed to go somewhere or do something. And it's actually the last thing I do at bedtime every night. I check the calendar. I see if there's something that I need to set an alarm for in the morning. And then in the morning, if I don't have an alarm go off, once I'm up and about, I check the calendar again to make sure that there's nothing coming up later that I've forgotten. It's one way of living in the moment. I think the challenge with that is that I tend to have anxiety about what I might be about to forget or what I've already forgotten that I don't remember yet. But it changed me. It changed things. And when I realized that I didn't... There's a hair. There's a hair somewhere. I'm going to find it. Maybe not. Anyway, I realized that I didn't have the capacity to be a librarian anymore, to do reference work for other people anymore in the same way. I was used to defining myself as an intellectual, as someone very intelligent, very very logical, very capable of multifunctioning, multitasking. You know, I read incredibly complicated books, all of that kind of stuff. And while I have this great vocabulary still, so I know I sound intelligent to a lot of people when I'm talking, I can't read those books anymore. I read more than a paragraph with big words in it, or more than a sentence with big words in it, and I can't remember what I already read. It's too much information for my brain to take in at one time now. I've found opened containers of chicken broth in the cupboard because I put them there and not in the fridge after I used part of the can, or part of the, it's a twisty top thing. I forget that there are leftovers in the fridge unless I open the fridge and look for them, because they're out of sight. I don't remember they're there. So I have these challenges going on, and I think many times we define ourselves by our work. What are you? I'm a librarian, right? And I can't define myself that way anymore. So I'm really lucky I have good counselors, and I think everybody should have a good counselor in their back pocket, if not in their regular monthly life, because we all go through these big, just foundation shaking changes at some point. And it's not shameful to go and get support and get help from someone who can help us find that silver lining or grow from the experience, instead of getting stuck in the pain or the fear or the avoidance of pain and fear. And it was really scary and really painful to basically have an identity crisis, to realize that I'm not an intellectual anymore. I'm not a reference librarian anymore. Well, what am I? And I ran into this. I'm watching a cat make a decision. I hope you make a good decision, Harley. Oh, good boy. Yes. I see other people having similar problems, but yesterday I ran into this because for me, the answer was art. I turned from being left-brained to being more right-brained. I gave myself the opportunity to really play with creative opportunities, to things I could just sit in bed or sit on the sofa and do. And since then, well, that's another piece. I'll get to that. But it meant that I still found things that I could practice and get better at, or that I was good at all along, and I never knew it. It was really beautiful and exciting in that piece of my life, even though this part over here was just scary and unsettling. And so for me, I think that process has taught me to value what I do have. And there is a mourning process that it's important to go through, of saying, I'm sad. I'm sad that I've lost this piece, or that this part of my life is changing, or, it's stressful to go through change, even good change. And then to come from that point and say, okay, but what can I find that's good? What can I find? What can I create in my life now that's good? And so for me, that was art. That was my fabric art, my textile art, my story quilts, my healing quilts. And the ones that I made initially were about 2 feet square, detailed as all get out, just hundreds of pieces of fabric in there, and making a landscape or a picture, or telling a story, using symbolism from a variety of traditions and things like that. And what I discovered over time, as I got sicker and sicker over the last few years, was that I couldn't do that anymore, because it was too much. To sit down and piece together one of those 2 foot square quilts takes a good 6 to 12 hours of work. And I can't really do anything for very long anymore. Certainly not 6 or 12 hours of sitting and using scissors and glue and my brain and sitting up and leaning over something, like none of that. I can't do that for that long. I can maybe do it for, 30 minutes, or on a good day, maybe an hour or two if I'm lucky. And then I rest for a month. And so I have still actually all of these 2 foot by 2 foot, or one is really big. I think it's like 4 or 5 feet tall or wide. I have it hidden. I hung it on my design wall sideways, so it's like 4 or 5 feet tall sideways. And they're sitting there glued together because I don't have the energy to sit down and sew them. Because after that 6 or 12 hours of piecing them together, and it takes a couple of hours to glue them down, and then you have to sew it all together after that. And the sewing together could take, another 6 hours, or however long it was going to take, a long time of pretty intense, focused, fine motor skills with the sewing machine. And whereas I was still trying to push myself to create, I knew better than to try and push myself to sew on the sewing machine, to sew these things down and really take the risk of hurting myself badly or destroying the art. Because at a certain point of tired, I just don't care anymore. I can't. There's not enough energy left to care, which is way past any healthy point of pushing myself. I should have stopped long before I get to that point. And so when I finally realized that I wasn't ever getting back around to the sewing part, I said, well, what can I do? And so I started making much smaller ones. And so now the story quilts that I make are, like this. They're, maybe 6 inches square, or sometimes, 6 by 12 inches, or, sometimes 4 inches by 4 inches. And they're really fun, and they're really much faster to make, and I still don't make very many of them because it still takes energy and it still takes time and focus, and I don't have very much of that, but I have enough to still make something beautiful and meaningful, and that feeds my soul, that nourishes me and makes me really happy. And the thing that came up in that situation, in that conversation yesterday, was that I was talking with someone who also used to be an artist and did just amazing, detailed, fine art, and doesn't have the fine motor skills anymore either, and was really mourning that, and has probably been mourning that for a very long time, because it is very sad and it is a big loss. But what I realized is that my version of that was losing my reference librarian stuff, losing myself as an intellectual. I think she lost herself as an artist, but she still has this very good brain, this very capable mental function. And I find myself thinking, well, I wonder what good she could use that for. Like, what could she make of that that's good? Good for her, and nourishing for her. And I think that while it is important to feel what we feel honestly and to be sad or to mourn or to do those things, it is also important to take the step after that and say, okay, well, what can I do? What do I have left? And how can I define myself? If I'm not a reference librarian, what am I? And for me, what I am is a good person. I'm a kind person. I'm a compassionate person who cares very deeply about people and about all life on earth, really. And I have a lot to learn to do that well, to be a good ally. But I care enough to try to learn those things and to keep trying and to practice what I learn as best I can in what capacity I have. And so I think that there's a whole lot of comfort in that for me, because I know that Whatever transitions I come up against, they may be difficult, they may be exciting, they may be wonderful, they may be sad again. But I know that I have the capacity to always find something that I can still do that's good, even if it's not something I've done before, even if it's not the way that I've done this thing in the past. There will always be something. And that is a gift that I would like to share, because there will always be something good that you can do too. And it may not be what you want, it may not be what you used to do, but if you can find it, there's so much comfort in knowing that you still have something to offer, something to improve the world by your presence. And you do. You have something in you, always, that will improve the world by your existence, even if all it is a smile. Even if what it is patience with people who misunderstand your situation. Even if all it is the ability to pet a cat or a dog and to love them and to receive their love. Receiving love is incredibly empowering for whoever has offered it to you, because it gives that love value. You are valuing what they have to offer. And that right there is deep and meaningful. And with that, blessings on your journey. I wish you well, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.